Linda, you've been a friend of Homer's for how long?
So on one of the slides, he showed a trip to the Philippines in 2008, which is when I met him. But I had heard about him years before. My then husband and I were on a cruise to Alaska, and we actually met Homer's sister-in-law. And she told me that her brother-in-law lived in Englewood and was a pretty well-known sheller. Fast forward a few years to the trip to the Philippines in the Los Angeles airport. And I had heard that he was going on the trip, and I went up to him and I said, "Are you Homer Rhode?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Well, I've had your name written down for a couple of years. Why haven't you joined the Englewood Shell Club?" He said, "Well, I always heard that it was kind of crafty and not very scientific." And I said, "Well, how are we supposed to be scientific when people like you don't join?" He said, "Good point." And he's been a member ever since.
Yay!
And we've been on numerous trips together, and as you can tell from his presentation, he's fascinating and just a joy to be around.
Thank you, Linda. Tell me your favorite Homer story.
Homer has been all over the world, and he has so many amazing stories. The one I really loved is he found Gloria Maris, and he was with Carlin Morgan, who's the president of COA, and when she was just a baby, and he took her because Gene Everson didn't want her, and they were down about 80 feet. They heard a big scream, and it was Aconus Gloria Maris, Glory of the Sea, and they both got one. So he is a rock star.
Cool. What's your favorite story, Homer story?
I want to hear more. I think he should write a book. I really do. Because he's fascinating and knowledge beyond anything, we would ever know.
Yeah.
He's probably got every shell, at least one, that's ever been made.
To introduce, and I'm lucky I got to spend some time with Homer. I helped make the slides, so I photographed his shells and I got to hear a lot of stories. And Homer started collecting shells when he was 5. And his parents were really crazy a little bit. Today's parents would have a cow, but apparently his dad was the first officer, FWC officer in the Everglades, right?
Oh, wow.
And so what Homer would do when he was 5 is that his parents would make him a lunch, his dad would drop him off somewhere in the Everglades, and he would pick him up when he was done for the day. So I can only imagine what kind of fun he got into when he was 5. Not only that, but he's traveled the whole world. A lot of people call me Dora, but really Homer has traveled all over the world and shelled on 7 continents, and he had a collection of over 100,000 shells, he told me. I believe that's correct. He was neighbors with Tucker Abbott. So, he had a lot of really fascinating stories. He survived 2 shipwrecks, and it was just amazing, all of the things that I learned about him. And of course, he's well known in the COA, the Conchologist of America, and he's won many awards there. I think, did he win the Neptunia Award? So we're really lucky that we have Homer in our club, and I would like to introduce Homer Rhode.
voice doesn't project very well. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I started collecting at an early age, and there are 4 types of shell collectors. Collectors that specialize in fossils, specialize in marine shells, specialize in freshwater shells, and my favorite shell, those who specialize in land snails. Land snails. My wife and I had the opportunity to travel, and we got to shell on all 7 continents. And at one time I had a pretty decent collection, but I sold a lot of it off and donated quite a bit to different museums. And I've kept a few of my favorites. Most of them have a story to tell with it, or it's just a special shell. So, are the slides ready?
Yep.
Okay. I think everybody knows the first shell collector is the Xenophora. I had a 100-gallon saltwater aquarium most of my life, and I'd always have a Xenophora in the tank. And they're really fascinating. They eat algae, and I spent most of my life working in Key West. And when I got off work on the way home, I would pull over, collect a rock with a lot of algae on it, and bring it to my buddy. And one day I put a small bivalve into the tank. It was very interesting. The Xenophora quickly went over, turned, and then squirted out a clear liquid, leaned up against the bivalve and took off. And in less than 1 second, the bivalve was attached to the Xenophora and stayed attached and live for many years.
Oh my gosh.
The Xenophora doesn't glide like most shells. The Xenophoras sort of hop. And he would hop along, and this bivalve would be flapping. And next. These are some early in my Everglades collecting. These are Libulus from Florida. Pictures are great. Next. Some more Libulus. I think those are actually hybrids. They're not a true color form. These are some we got in Cuba. You're not allowed to travel to Cuba, but if I had gone, I would have collected these Palomita. They primarily live on banana plants. These are spondulus varians. To me, they're one of the more attractive spondulus. They can be quite colorful and get to be really huge. I've seen them bigger than the top of this.
And they're land? They're land?
No, they're spondulus. They're a saltwater.
Oh, salt water.
Yeah. Next.
Oh.
And this is one of my favorite shells. This is Pictus. It was thought to be extinct for many years, and then a friend was driving on Big Pine, saw one on a tree, and planted it in the park, and there they're not thriving, but they're existing in the pond. Next.
Never got thrown in there. Oops.
These are spondylus princeps, another, I think, colorful and attractive spondylus. Found out they're also good eating. Next.
That's just another view.
Now this, unfortunately I forgot to bring it, but this is a replica made of leopard cone, Conus leopardus. You can see that's just the way the animal looks when it moves along. There are a lot of dangerous cones, but the leopard cone is just large. Next. And this is just a picture of a couple of the shelling low tide. My favorite shelling location, not including land snails, was Western Australia. The shelling there is just unbelievable. The tide can go out for miles, and you can collect more shells than you could even hope to carry. But you have to pay attention, because once the tide starts coming in, and this is just some of the shells we collected one afternoon. We weren't diving then, we were snorkeling, but we did get a lot of our better shells scuba diving. Okay, next. This is an extremely rare shell. This is a what they call a slit shell, and I haven't seen one of these on a dealer's table in probably 20 years. There are lots of slit shells, but these guys are extremely deep water. Next. Lambus scorpios. These guys are fairly shallow water shells that I think they're quite interesting, primarily for their shape, but once again, they're pretty good eating. Next. And this is a Cyprius cervus. I forgot to bring it, but I have one that's close to the world record. It's really, really large. That one came from the Keys.
Do you want me to go back?
No, that's fine. This is one of the fairly uncommon to rare Cypriot, Valentia. You don't see many of those on dealers' tables. Next.
I think that's the same one.
Marginata it's uncommon. I don't know if it's rare, but it's fairly uncommon. And to be honest, I kept the case of Cypriot because I've had a lot of offers for that case, and in my old age, if I need next.
What got shiny? That's what I was thinking.
They are.
Like a mirror.
Did you take that on your patio?
His patio.
His patio.
I don't think those are actually friend eye.
Okay, my mistake.
I think friend eye will show up in the room. Okay, now here's a friend eye.
Okay.
I have a couple of them. One is almost all black, which is quite unusual. Next. At one time, this was quite an uncommon, rare shell. Gattata. They're quite attractive, and I've made a few jokes about eating, but I had a friend who tried to eat one, and he said, "No good."
That's the other side of it.
Next. This is one that's with the animal not entirely covering the shell, but gives you an idea of sometimes what you look for when you're collecting. Next. And these are golden calories. One of my jokes is that I have the world record golden calories. But it's a fake. And believe it or not, the fakes were selling for much, much more than the real thing. A friend of mine, Glenn Duffy, couldn't believe it. Next. That's another fairly uncommon
Almost looks like a flag.
Yes.
Next. Porterai,
Look how yellow.
I
Wow.
think Porterai is bordering on rare. It's a deep water cypria. Next. This was, at one time I was doing a lot of photography, particularly underwater, but this was at low tide, and you can see how long the siphonal canal is. These things can be well under the sand or gravel and still breathe quite nicely. Next. Another example, you can see the siphonal canal. Next.
It's the semi-plata Hawaii.
Yeah, I was trying to focus in. These were collected by my wife. She went diving with me off of the western coast of Oahu. And we were down about an hour and a half scuba diving. And she was quite irritated that she only found a total of 3 shells. But when I explained that all 3 were uncommon to rare, it perked her up. Next.
One's the, how do you say that, Linda?
Oh,
Artufeli and
artifili, that's, it's not considered rare, but you'd be hard pressed to find them at the Warson and COA.
They're very expensive with locals.
Next. One of my favorite stroms, Stromus fasciata. They're only found in the Red Sea. And shelling in the Red Sea is really excellent. We found really a lot of species there that we'd never seen before. And these little guys are fairly good eating. Next. He's so splendid. This, at one time, this was considered quite rare. But they found the true habitat for them, so they're not as scarce as they used to be. we made a trip to Panama just to collect these. Next.
Oh.
Yes, this shows that the animal is probably more, a little prettier than the shell itself. Next. Trigonous style molar. These are still considered fairly uncommon. They're gorgeous little shells. They don't get very big. The mullari is really a collector's dream. Next.
Where did the tree come from?
Panama.
Panama.
Well, actually, Sandglass Islands and Panama, that whole Atlantic region. And this is a really interesting shell, the Opiostoma pseudonum. At one time, these were used as weapons. You can see the short tooth. Pseudonym means false, and the common name for these are the false tooth shell. And some of the natives used to attach them to pieces of bamboo and use them as weapons. And you also need to be careful when you collect them. They're inshore rock dwellers, and sometimes the false tooth gets you. Next. This is just some of the shells we collected. I think these are from Broome, Western Australia. Next. Interesting story goes with this Echinopterus. Not a common virusid, but not particularly rare. But we went to a certain area in Western Australia to collect these, and they're often confused with another murex. But after collecting them, we had some bad flight connections, and we basically went 2 days without sleeping on the way home. And finally, when we got to LA, we immediately had a flight out to Miami, and there was just 3 of us on the flight. And I said, there's no way they're gonna take a 747 to Miami for 3 passengers. Well, we took off. So I laid across a couple of streets, I lifted up the bars and went to sleep. And in a little while, I felt something on my wallet. And I thought, oh my goodness, somebody's picking my pocket. So I doubled up my fist, jumped up to smash him. And it was Jimmy Carter. There's 2 guys in black suits jumped on me and pinned me down. President Carter prevailed. He said, guys, I just startled him. Make him up. I don't know how he was as president, but he was very friendly. He just stood around and talked for about 5 minutes. Next.
Oh, I had another shot.
Oh my God.
Oh, this a sort of a sad story that goes with this Neptunia Award full guy. Collected in the Sandglass Islands. And had an old-time shelling friend. Been on more than 20 trips with the lady. And while snorkeling, she cut her arm on some coral and didn't treat it. And she got coal poisoning and didn't make it. But I found this guy in the true habitat. Most epitoniums are found in sand under an anemone. So many times they're snorkeling or diving at sea in the anemone, grovel around the anemone. And quite frankly, that'd be the only way to find something like this was Rhode. It was also a world record. Next. Another picture of it. Next. I don't remember this.
It's the gentleman.
Oh, okay. One of my best friends, Alan Gettleman, passed away in December. And I'd been on probably 30 trips with him. He was an avid land snailer. And we would go all over the world, going up the mountains looking for land snails. And this one was named after Alan. Yeah, well, I never did. And this is another one of my favorites, Olivia porphyria. It gets to be the largest olive, marine olive. There are some larger fossil olives, but these guys get quite large. Found this, it's usually a deep water olive. We found these at night. The gallon was with us. And at extreme low tide, you just wade out. And they make such a, they're a big olive, they make such a wide trail. You can swat them in a minute. Next. Hostilum. It's a fairly common mucid, but of all the trips we made, this is the only one we ever found, and my wife found it in fairly shallow water, which is another unusual thing. It was gliding along on sand. That was in the Solomon Islands. Next. And there's a cone that's just coming up. Next. Oh, we made a trip just to find these particular cymadiums. They're quite hairy and attractive. And I assume everybody knows how you have the hair stay. We collected these 40 years ago, and today you could still see the periostracum and the hair just like they were collected yesterday. The secret is something that Dr. Abbott told me. He said we use something called WAG, equal mixture of water, alcohol, and glycerin. We mix it up, take a small paintbrush, paint it on the shell, and it looks great for, he said, forever, but I don't know. Next. And this is a fairly common volute. Call it the music volute. We weren't on a shelling trip. We were on a cruise to the Caribbean, and we got off the dock and we were walking along the pier, and in very shallow water. My wife said, "Isn't that a music volute moving along?" So she hopped in the water and collected it. Next. Conus amaryllis. It's one of my favorite, maybe my favorite cone. We're in the Solomon Islands, and I went on this trip particularly to find a nice amaryllis. And we were in the, I think, just past the Bowie Passage in the Solomons, and there was this very small little island that was shaped just like a cone. And the captain said, I think that's where you're going to find your amaryllis. And it was about 100 feet. And looking down, it was on sand, and it stood out so bright on the sand that I went down and got it. But still one of my favorite shells. Next. Another picture of the amaryllis. This is a strange shell. Pitar lupinaria. For years they were considered hard to find. Found some, well actually Alan Gettleman was with me. We were walking down a beach in West Mexico and saw an indentation in the sand and started digging down. And I met the spines.
Ouch.
And we found our habitat is right at the surf line, buried 4 or 5 inches down in the sand. But very interesting bivalve. Pretty good eating. Yeah, this is a common shell that I think I took it just to show the animal. At one time I was really into photography, and I had literally thousands of underwater pictures showing the animal. But when I moved to my retirement place, I threw them all out. And this is one I think that just got left by mistake. Next. Conus aulicus. This one can do some damage if it stings you. I think a recent program, the presenter told you about the hazards of cones that can. Actually, there's an interesting story. One place we were in the Solomons, they were prosecuting this lady. Her husband was a drunkard and beat her. And she had enough of it, so one night she went out and collected, I think it was a Conus textile, put it in bed with him, and he never woke up.
Goodbye, Earl.
She would have gotten away with it, except when the coroner came, he saw the cone next to the dead body. She forgot to remove it. Another picture geologist. Another. You don't see much of the animal, but you can see a little bit. Next. This is a fairly rare cone. This is Flocatus. Found this really deep water in a hole in the rocks. And I was reluctant to pull it out because on a recent trip, I saw a rare cone in a hole in the rocks in fairly deep water, and I couldn't get it out, so I took my glove off, reached in, I got the cone, but a large eel got me. Almost lost a finger. But the Fulcatus is a very prized comb. Next. It's the bivalve. Okay.
No name conus.
This, between my wife and I, we collected well over 50 shells that had never been described and named. And this was one. I collected 3 of them, and I sold 2 of them to a guy from California, Cargon. Specializes in combs, and I thought he might name it after me, but he got very sick, and I don't think he's doing much with shells at all now. But it's an attractive comb, primarily orange-red, and of the 4 I collected, this one was the largest. Next. And this is my large Mimosus. We got this one after our second shipwreck. We were out in bad weather and shouldn't have been out, but swimming back to shore, we saw these guys were crawling across the sand. And it was about 20 feet, and the water was cold, and I was tired. So, like a gentleman, I said to my wife, I'll have to go down and get it because there's no way a woman could do that. She said, the hell do you say? So, that was actually her shell.
Oh my God.
Took a couple of pictures of marginellas from South Africa, and nothing special about them except I was fascinated for a while about the bodies of the particularly marginellas. Next, there's another one. The bodies are, sometimes they try and mimic the shell itself.
This is the finale shell, and I didn't have the name of it. It's your left-handed one.
Oh, okay. Kept this one because we were in Eleuthera, and my wife had collected a whole bucket full of shells. And there's no sense keeping something we already had, so I picked one out and pulled it back. I got to this one, and I was just set to let it go, and the light went off in my head. It was, can everybody tell me what it is? Sinestro. Sinestro, left-handed, it's a left-handed. And this Marginella guttata was the only one of its kind that I've heard of. So, couldn't get rid of it. Is that the last one?
I think that's it.
Any questions? Yes.
Did you have any trouble getting these shells through customs?
Not a bit. You have to know what you're doing, but in the old days, you just packed them up. The biggest problem was the odor that some of them and what I did was I would put them in alcohol, let them sit for a couple of days, and then wrap them up and put them in airtight plastic bag and never had a problem. But I was on a trip where a guy didn't properly clean them. We were headed back to the States on the 747. All of a sudden it turned around. And we went back to the Solomons and they unloaded all the baggage, and this guy's shells were so bad that it would bring tears to your eyes. So you have to use good judgment, and it's best not to have them in carry-ons because you know that's just asking for trouble. It's best to pack them in something small. You could put in, we used to put in shade kits and try and hide them. A few countries are very officious when it comes to shells. Australia used to be one, but now they could care less. Any other questions?
Can you tell us about your shipwrecks?
One of them was almost my last trip. We were on a ship called the Sirenia, and we didn't know it at the time, but the captain had only navigated on the Great Lakes. So 83, it was an 83-foot steel hull vessel with 35 shellers. It was the whole shelling club from Astronaut Trail at that time. And he ran into ground on Matnilla Shoals, and we went down, and unfortunately there was one lifesaver, or life jacket on the whole ship.
Oh, God.
So the captain got that one. And we would have died, except in the local, the nearest island, there's a fishing village, and one of the charter boat captains found a willing person. So he took it out. He couldn't get a hotel room, so we took her out and came across some of the drift from the boat. And he radioed the Coast Guard, and we got picked up. And less than 2 hours later, they had photographs. There was no hint that anything had happened when the ship went down.
And how long were you out there, Homer? You quite a while, right?
Yeah, 2.5 days we were hanging out.
Oh my gosh.
And that one we were fortunate. Any
Where
others?
were you exactly? Where were you, Homer?
We were, well, exactly on Matnilla Shoals in the Bahamas.
Sharks?
Luckily, we didn't see them. Although I did survive a shark attack one time.
Oh my God.
But that's another story.
Good.
Some of these stories go on and on. Well, I was diving off Ponape on a Menduffy trip. And we were down pretty deep scuba diving, and I saw this shark coming at me. Luckily, it was just a common reef shark. It wasn't a really killer necessarily. And I had full garb on. I had a couple of wetsuits, tank, BC, and I was pretty well protected, so I just went into a ball, and he hit me. And I did 2 360s, came down and looked around, and he decided to look for somebody else. Any other questions? Well, thank you.